What is up, guys? This is Raventoon, and today I'm going to be showing you how to build your own uh, Magnetar box. These are the actual Magnetars that came from VN, and I was asked by one of the people who had bought one and right at the close to go ahead and build theirs because it didn't. A lot of the boxes did not get built or repaired, and I ended up having access to them. So I offered the service to be able to get these done. Now, whenever you get an enclosure, which is this part, you're not going to have all the stuff on it. This is stuff that was done at VN. All the milling and stuff is ready for it, and it doesn't come with any magnets or anything like that. So one of the first things you're going to go ahead and do is put in the magnets. So let me just grab my magnets that I have so that I can actually get these done. Oh. Yeah, they're magnets. Now, as you can see, these magnet holes are slightly the same. They should be pretty close. Each set of magnets comes with 4 small ones and 4 big ones. If you order through Drip 3D, you'll basically get all this same kit and everything when you do it. So, first things first, we're going to take a little box lid. This is a lid off the box from these DNA 250s that you can get through Drip 3D. And you'll just take and mix you up some epoxy. This is Bob & Smith Industries 2-part epoxy, 5 minutes. You can just go ahead and you want to have the same amount on each one. You just need a little bit down of each one. So got the first bit and the other part of it. I'm almost out of epoxy in these, but there we go. You want it kind of the same amount, so it looks like the red, there's a little bit more of that than the hardener, so I'll just put a little bit more down. Okay, that's about the same amount. And you'll take a little piece of wire or whatever you have around and just mix that up real good. Alright, so next part is going ahead and preparing the magnets. As you can see, they stick in a certain way, so what you'll do is you'll first find out which one goes where. Okay, these smaller ones go down in this, bigger ones go down in these. So you want them to be on the same way on each one, just so that when you put them in, they don't have too many problems. So we'll go ahead and take the first one. You can use a nail or whatever to do this. As they slowly stick to each other. Put that in there. Alright, so as you can see, that'll stick perfectly right there. I'm just using the end of a little thing I have. And you'll take that, put a little bit on the bottom, stick it in there, and scrape off. If you have a little bit of epoxy, that's fine. Just go ahead and clean them off like that. And you're good. Okay. So we'll just go through the process of putting each one of these on. you want to try and get it on all the same way. And if you have extra magnets, now's a good time to actually get them out and put them on the back of here to hold them in place. Alright, so those are all in. Let's go ahead and use these to hold them in place, if they will come apart. Sometimes they have issues with coming apart, but yeah. Okay, as you can see, they're not going to take and want to go that way, so you'll just put them on there, and that'll hold. Ooh. This one's one to be finicky. Alright, so what you're going to do is, first things first, you're going to try and make sure you get the right side. Okay, so that's pulling. So you know that this top part right here needs to go facing the front. So you'll just go through, put a little epoxy on it, place it down in there. Make sure you do this with all of them. Double check to just make sure. Yep, that's going to be it. So you want to flip this around just to be safe. Put that in the epoxy. Okay, that's backwards. So just do that. Flip it around. Oop, lost. You don't want the side that you place up being the one that repels. So we'll let that cure. Oh, real quick. After you get done with this, you're going to want to take some acetone, which it's basically the same, known as nail polish remover. Get this at Walmart or wherever you would like, and just go through over each edge and just go ahead and get all the extra off. You want to try and get everything on there. And then just go through, and on these you'll want to just take and put on each edge a thing to keep it from jumping up. These little clamps work great for it. because they have a flat edge that just sticks down on it. Alright, so we'll come back whenever everything's cured and everything. And yeah, so just give it a second, guys. Alright, so while we wait for those to, this part to cure, we are going to take and go through and start working a little bit of the, on a little bit of the stuff that we can while we're waiting. So, we've got our board here. It comes with the board itself, a screen, and the balance plug. And you'll want to keep this box for stuff that you do while you're working. We've got our 510 connector right here, our buttons, and our board sled, which comes with the screws that you need for it. So what we're going to do first is we're going to actually get the board ready for any stuff we do. So we're just going to go ahead and put solder on all of the pads before we start soldering and everything, so that we can basically pre-tin them. Pre-tinning is where you take a little bit of solder and you just put it on the bare pads so that they have something to connect to. See? Let me just check in the camera just to make sure. Yeah, you can see. And you'll just go over them with a little bit of this. And the solder actually helps, the solder mask that's on there helps to give you a real nice shiny solder point. Put a little bit more. Make sure you clean your tip as you go along. You'll just get a little bit on there, and then as you can see, the tip is silver right now, but it'll get black and stuff, and that just makes the solder's points look horrible sometimes. Get a little bit more on that. Yep, there we go. Now for the connections for the 510, right here, right here. Let's check them. Heat them up just a little bit more. Alright, so we got all the points ready for the connections. The next part that we're going to do is go ahead and set up everything for our 510. Now I have a pre-made one right here that I could use, but I'm going to show you how to do your own connection for the 510, for the balance plug. What you'll do is just grab you some 22 gauge wire. Just cut any length you'd prefer. I gotta do that. Put those magnets right there. Alright, and you're really going to be wanting to decide how far you want them to be. Most of the ones we do, the balance plug end will be about right here on the board. Well, turn this around. It'll be around right here. See if you can see that on the board, so that it has room for the balance plug on the battery to actually go to. So what we're going to do is just cut us some, I don't know, I have no clue what the actual length is, but we'll just do this all by sight so that you can see for yourself how to do it. I'm sure these are all basically the same length. And final one. If they're slightly off, that's fine. You'll be doing some more work on them here in a minute. And sorry about my voice and everything. I've been sick for a little while, so still trying to get over it. Alright, so you'll take and strip the end, just a small little piece off of it. Then you're just going to want to twist it. You'll want the end to be twisted, and that'll help with the solder point. Just put a little bit of solder on it to help, and then just pre-tin that connection. Clean off your end, set that to the side, because that wire will get really hot if you keep working on just that one wire. So you want to go through and just do every one of them as you go. Alright, little solder mask on it. Little tin on it, and you don't need this this very good one for your solder. You can get one of the little ones from Walmart, a little Walmart soldering gun to do this. This just I like this because I do a lot when I do repairs. Sometimes I have to desolder stuff, so I need a little bit more heated one. Higher heat on some spots, so I can change up which one I use. But you can use just a regular solder gun from Walmart to do all this. Okay, and get this last one. It looks a little bit shorter. No, I guess not. It'll be all right. Alright, so that's all the connections pre-soldered right there. Now what you're going to do is you will actually take one of your little box pieces, which is what I usually do. You'll take a little small one of these and just put it in there so you have something holding it, so when you go to solder onto it, it's not just flopping all over the place. So now that these have cooled, put a little more solder paste on them, get a little bit of solder on your gun, and you don't want to leave these down for too long. Just want them to connect. Check in there, make sure you didn't leave it down for too long. Looks like a good connection. Alright, so let's just go on to the next one. Set this like this. Alright. Right on there. Now if you're blind like I am, you can get a little bit closer on it so that you can see, but I'm trying to stay out of frame as much as possible so that you can see it a little bit better. Alright, so that is all of the plugs, the little wires connected. Check in there and make sure these did not move. One of the things that you will do a lot is you will overheat this plastic, and it'll cause everything to move out of space and everything. But everything looks good on that, so we'll just set that right here. And we'll get to the next point. Now this is just, you can do this or not. It helps with safety. But just get you some really thin tubing. Crap, I can't think right now. Heat shrink tubing. And what you'll do, you'll just spread these out a little bit. Put them up to, use your finger like that away from this, because if you try and put them on one by one, they're going to cause problems. They just will, believe me. Alright, so they're all on. Bring them down at the same time. It's good. Let me turn on my heat gun. Alright, so there you go. Our heat shrunk on there. That is not going anywhere. Let me do this. There we go. And if my voice goes up and down, the camera is like right next to me, so it's kind of hard to get everything set. So there's your balance connector, ready to go. Alright guys, so next thing we're going to work on is the battery connector. Now if you go to Drip 3D, they show you how to actually solder the 1 point, but this is for whenever there at the end of Vaporized Nomads we started doing user serviceable ones. So what we're going to do is first we're going to show you how we do the new user serviceable ones. So here we go. You're going to get solid copper wire. I believe this is 12 gauge copper wire. And you'll just take and make a bend. Then what I usually do is I grab it about halfway and then do another bend so that you have almost a little, just a little Z almost. It's going to be connected like that. And then you just cut it to length. Alright, so we got that. And next we're going to go ahead and grab our connector. Now when you order these connectors, they are the XT30s. They come with a little bit of shrink wrap and a bunch of these connectors. I'm almost out on this one. But the connector on the board is going to be this female end, and it has little spots that have the positive and negative on it, so you can't really miss anything. So onto this negative end, we are going to connect the piece of copper wire that we cut. You'll want a pair of tweezers for this because this will get really hot. And as you can see, it actually stays hot for a very long time. So let's go ahead and put a little solder mask on it. Get us a little more tint of this solder out. And we're just going to tin this a little bit. Add a little extra tin to it. That way it stays. Let it cool down a little bit. And a little bit more solder mask on it. As you can see, it's still hot, so it's not going to actually collect the solder mask really quickly. But we got a little bit on there. And we're actually just going to heat it up, grab it by a small spot, so it stays in that same position, because this will stay hot for a while. There we go. And we got the first little solder joint right there on the end. So we're just going to switch it over to do the positive end. We'll take a little bit of 12 gauge wire and do like we've been doing, twist the end, Put a little solder paste on it. Get a little solder on it. And there you go. You got that pre-tinned. Cool it down a little bit. And put a little more solder mask on it. Don't need a lot, but it just makes it look pretty. Let that heat up. Let that solder flow into everything. And there you go. You have that all ready. Now you'll take a little bit of this heat shrink material. You can either buy your own or use what they send you. Just take a little bit on the end. And I've got to cut this because I use this end for mixing for a bunch of them. So we'll just do this. Take that little mixing end off. Alright. And when we put this in here, we're going to make sure it jams down into that little spot right there. Let's turn on our heat gun. And we're just going to heat this shrink wrap till it connects real good. Alright, that's done. And we just decide how long this end needs to be. But before we do that, we're going to go ahead and take our board and place it down. Now, on these boards, it's got this little jut out. That's why one of the good things is to keep your lids, because they can act as a pretty good little stand for you. And we're going to decide how far this is going to be down. So we'll choose our length. Yeah, that's about right. So let's take that off. And we can strip away these little, cut away these little spots so that it's all the same length. Strip these ends. And twist. Just going to go through the process of doing each one. Got a little solder on that. And since we pre-tinned the pads, we don't really need a lot of solder, just enough so that when we put it down, it just has enough on the thing to actually allow it to flow a little bit into each other. Do that. A little solder on there. Sorry, I'm not talking much. I'm just trying to concentrate and make sure I do all this right for you guys. Alrighty, so we got all our ends soldered. Now, when you're placing this on the board, if it's flowing up this way, you're going to want these two little spots. You want the blank spot on the back like that. You want it facing like that. If you're doing one like this, which some of the older ones do, you'll do like this. You want this facing up. So, put a little solder on here. Make sure that's all in there. Alright, just take your tweezers, hold that down, place this a little bit over to the side. That way you have everything set. And you're going to take and just hit it real slowly. Check your connection, and then just go right there. So next one. And there. Alright, so that's all the solder points on that part done. You can double check everything, double check your work, make sure nothing is touching, because that can cause issues. Alright, so that part is done. Now, next thing you're going to want to do before you put your battery connector on is go ahead and put everything in the sled. Comes with its own screws. Just make sure you got a small enough screwdriver. I use this iFixit kit screwdriver. It works wonders. You're just gonna put it in there and then just pop it on. After we decide it's one thing about these are pretty hardy. But there's one part I just forgot. Sorry, guys. Alright, guys. Sorry about that. I kind of forgot about one thing because I usually have multiple of these set up to be already used. But setting up the screen in the board holder is pretty easy, actually. You'll take and you'll just line it up like that. And then you want to place it face down on the table and push it down so it's flush with the front of the thing. So you'll set it right there. Then you'll just take your glue stick and let me clean this off. Make sure that's cleaned off so you don't have all kinds of little things going on. And you'll just put a little bit down beside it. You don't want it going too high, as this can cause problems with the board and everything. But as you go around, once you get used to doing it, it actually becomes pretty simple to figure out where and when you need to do this. So just let that cool down just a hair so that we can take everything off and get rid of those little spider webs. Alrighty. Now, just clear it out a little bit. Make sure everything is straight and clear, and you're good to go. Alright, so when we last left off, I'd put these magnets on. As you can see, they're all flat and ready to go. And we'll do a little bit more work on this just to make sure that it's completely flat, that all the sides are perfectly put on there correctly. And we'll clean it up before we get done with everything. Alright, so next thing you're going to want to do is I've let this sit overnight just to be safe, because sometimes right when it's soldered it'll be strong there, but if you let it sit for a day, everything will take and finally get to its little spot where it needs to be, and sometimes it'll come undone. So you don't want to do too much right in one day, or else you might have problems later on. And sorry guys if I sound sick, I am. I'm trying to get this done as best I can for you guys. Alright, so got that. You're going to want to go ahead and install the screen. So best way I've found is to basically accordion it up like this, where it's just doing that. I don't know if you guys can see that, but it accordions up like that. Then you'll just take your tweezers and push it into this little spot, into this little thing. And then push that down, and your screen is connected. Go ahead and just press everything into place, Make sure it's a good fit. Looks like it is. And I usually leave this little protector on for when I go to epoxy the board in. So, next part is one of the easier parts. You will make sure everything is down, and you'll take the screws that came with your board. Make sure you've got the right screw bit, because these will take and come undone very easily. They will take and lose their got a little bit of overhang right there, but we can just tighten it out. And you don't want to go too tight, because you may just strip out the spot on there. Then just go to the next one and make sure all of them are nice and tight and holding firm. And usually if you get these, they'll have an extra screw in there. That way if you lose one of these screws, you are not out completely. Alright. So that is ready for the next part. Put this in my screw tray. Alright. Now you're just going to line this up and find out where it is going to connect. Then take your clippers, make a little spot just to make sure, and then just clip it the rest of the way off, and do your connection and solders like you've been doing them on this one. Pre-10. Alright. Let's put a little bit of solder paste on there. Alright. Let that cool real quick. Alrighty. And now the hard part. You're going to take and line this up with that pre-soldered joint right there. Take you a little bit of solder paste and actually put it on there so that it has some way to go. And you're going to take and just hold it down, let it connect. And just hold heat on it until it collects the solder. There, as you can see. Now if this loosens up a little bit, you're fine. Most of the time it'll actually flow itself into place, but if not, just take your tweezers and resolder a little bit. Alright, so the board is ready to go in. Now to actually connect everything else. You have your 510s, 510 connector. Just take and open it all the way up. Then you'll want to twist this all the way until it's tight. I mean, you won't get it completely tight, but it'll be pretty tight actually. Alright, then you just put a little solder paste on it and a little solder paste on this. That way you're ready to receive the tinning. So get you a good drop solder on there. Good drop of solder on there. Excuse me. Now I do have these already pre-cut and pre-tinned and soldered. It just makes it easier. But the longer ones are the ones that are going to go on here. These will go on here. Now, when it's facing you, you're going to take it, put a little solder paste on it, place it like that. This way, this one is facing to your left with everything else pointing towards you. Put your little solder on your thing. Now, you don't have to use as much solder as I do, but I do like to use enough to make sure that everything stays. And you'll connect this. It doesn't really matter which way you set it. It's up to you. Alright, so we got it connected. Now it's time to begin preparing this to receive this. Place this like that in there. Use this to basically help you guide it. And then one thing you'll notice is this won't fit perfectly. So you'll want to twist that just slightly up. You don't want to twist it too much so that it takes and doesn't connect properly, but you don't want to have it too long so that it won't fit. Okay. Alright, that connects good. And then just take your nut, put it right on there, and try and get it as even as possible so that it's easier to take and just slide on. And you shouldn't have any force problems with screwing this on. If you do, you've probably got it slightly cross-threaded. So just take it off and just restart. And then take whichever screwdriver or socket or piece of equipment you're using to tighten things down and tighten it down. Alright, so we got it tight. We're now able to work on the next step, and that is getting everything ready to fit the board in. Alright, so take your epoxy, get ready to put it in there. Make sure you use even amounts of everything. You want to use a little bit more than you usually use just to make sure you cover the full area. Now, one note, this stuff does stink. So if you avoid bad smells at all costs, you're out of luck when building. Just mix it on up. And this is one of the good things about 5-minute epoxy is you can mix it up real good before you actually put it on there. Right. And remember, I said keep this screen protector on so that while you do this, if a little bit gets on the screen, it comes right off with that screen protector. And you don't want to put a lot, like globs of this on the close to the buttons, because they will get stuck. And I'll show you a little trick for how to get them unstuck later on. As you can see, it's kind of come undone, but that will happen, guys, so don't worry too much, because once you put it in there, the rest of this stuff will actually hold it in place a little bit. So go ahead and take off your screen protector. Well, first, take your buttons and place them in there, in the spots they're going to be in. Make sure everything's out of the way. And then final step, to get rid of any button rattle, put you a little bit of this on the edges, and as you can see, it's trying to glob up right there. Just take a little bit of that and just smooth it out a little more. You know, you're not going to have too much problems out of it, as long as you don't use an overly ambitious amount. So, as you can see, screen's perfectly safe. And just line everything up. Make sure that when you look at it, you probably can't see it on film, but when you look at it, you'll see a little black line. Just make sure that's lined up. Take and place your clamps on it to hold everything together. Make sure you double check everything as you do it. Now, we could have taken and gone ahead and epoxied and connected those solder joints for the thing, but I like to wait until after I've got it epoxied in. That way, if I do have something mess up, all I gotta do is just pull the epoxy off. And just let that sit for about 10 minutes. Alright, so last time we left off, we were waiting on everything to finish cooling down and finish up. Now we're going to go ahead and do the next part. Before we do the battery, we're just going to go ahead and connect these. So it's kind of hard to see from this angle, so I'll just do my best to make it simple so that you can see it. Put a little bit of solder paste on it. Just make sure everything lines up. First things first, I gotta clean off my solder gun. Just wait a second and let it heat up a little bit better, because I forgot to turn it back on after everything got done. Alright, it's smoking a little bit, so that means it's heated up. Just gotta let it finish heating up a little bit more. There we go. Just clean the tip off a little, put a little bit of solder on there to kind of give it a little bit more. Alright, And you want to put everything in the light so that you can see it. And then just heat it up, let that solder flow. And there you go. Now the last one. This takes and comes around right here. Put a little bit of solder paste on the end. Alright. Now, just going to twist it so it comes on here backwards. Okay. And then heat it up so it flows in there. Double check your connection, make sure everything is still not connecting. Make sure the only thing that's connecting is what needs to connect. Alright, so that's all on there. Double check your buttons, because especially after soldering this part, after epoxying this part, sometimes the buttons will get soldered in. Double check that everything is down good. And it looks like it is. Everything still looks straight. Next, we're going to put the battery on, which I have it right here. Now this is how it will come, other than this. But what I do is I'll just take and, if this is not loose enough, I'll take and just make a tiny slit in the in this plastic right here so that I can move it around a little bit more. And the way I was going to show you guys was to do like this, set it in there, and then just about where it connects with the end right here, that's where you're going to cut. So you'll separate everything and do the first one. Now you don't want this touching whenever you do it, so just use that. Alright, so there you go. And you do not want these two ends to touch, especially after you've taken the ends apart, because a lot of times they have a chance of blowing up. They have a chance, but that's with any LiPo battery. Alright, so we got those ends. Let's go ahead and strip one of the ends. Doesn't really matter which one you want to do. You don't need to strip off that much, just a little bit. Twist it around, and just go through the same process we always do with soldering. Get a little bit on there. And just solder, heat it up so that the solder just flows onto it. Put a little bit more on there. Alright. Now, also one of the things that will come whenever you, if you ever decide to do this yourself and you order a bag of parts, they're going to be the XT30s. And the ones we get, they come in packs of 10, and they come with a little piece of shrink wrap for each on it, for red and black. So just take a little bit of this, let this cool down enough to where it's not going to shrink it right away. You take that, take one of your little connectors right here, make sure that you get the right point. It'll have a negative symbol on the negative side and a positive symbol on the positive side, so you shouldn't have any problems. And then just put a little solder mask on there. Make sure you push this down, because this can get kind of flimsy on here. And then just heat the solder, make sure it flows through. And there you go. You got a good solder joint right there. Just take your stuff, and there'll be a little bit of a inlet right here that you can use. Then just take and get the solder point, well, the heat shrunk down. You can use the end of your solder iron or for this, but it's usually just easier if you have a heat gun to just go ahead and use it. As you can see, now we take the next end, and since this is pretty much safe right here, you don't really have to worry too much after you've got that first point down. You still want to be a little careful, but still, you know, it gives you a little bit of a chance to make sure everything is connected properly and safely. Alright, let that cool a little bit and cut off our little bit for this next point. Just connect that down. It's still got a little bit of that solder mask on there, so it helps a little bit. Make sure you double check your connection, make sure it's nice and flowed correctly. Needs a little more solder on there. Need just a little bit more solder. And that connection just kind of flew off on its own a little bit, so we'll take it. There we go. That's a little bit better. You don't want to get it too hot, but again, just do it as much as you're comfortable with. Alright, that connection is good. Turn this heat back on. Sure that point gets, all that shrink wrap goes down pretty good. Alright, so we got that connection done. Last part. We're going to double check everything, make sure everything is going to the right ones. Negatives going to the negative side. And we're going to check this board. Check everything, just make sure everything works correctly before we finish up. And it cuts on. No issues. Alright. So the last bit, we'll now usually I would take and epoxy this, but since it's going to be, I'm making it so that the user can service it, I've just been using hot glue. That way you don't have to have this little thing to be able to get it out. You can easily make one of these, but it just makes it so much simpler to just take and use a little hot glue on it instead of having to go through hours of torture trying to get everything to go. So just put a little hot glue on it. Make sure everything is connected properly. Okay, everything is on. Still check. Door fits good. We gotta clean it up a little bit. We'll clean it up a little bit before we send it off, but that's all it basically is. And plus, we gotta add the software to this. That just involves hooking it up to the Evolve software and going from there. But yeah, guys, that's all there is to it. But you guys have a good one. Thanks for watching. If you're on YouTube, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Hit that notification bell so that anytime I upload, you get a notification of it. Have a good one. Bye.